Well, Turner, I mentioned at the start, we have a guest in studio, and he is sitting right here. It's always fun to have a guest in studio. He is the author of this book, which we're going to talk about. I'm going to hold it up first so you can see it. Yeah, okay, you can see it. It is called The Red-Green Axis 2.0, An Existential Threat to America and the World by author James Simpson. So, hello, sir.
Good afternoon, Debbie. Great to be with you.
I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming in the studio. And I just want to jump right into your book. I want to just say, folks, first of all, this book, you can order it, you can order it on
Amazon.
You can order it from the Center for Security Policy. But even the title, I wanted to take 2 seconds and talk about the title, The Red-Green Axis. And I underlined the language I want to read to you because I think some people are not familiar with this wording. And that was what we're going to talk about the rest of the time, talking with author Jim Simpson. But from his introduction, the red-green axis is a collusion between the Democrat Party, American communists, socialists, and other brands of progressives, i.e. the red, and the forces of the Islamic Jihad, the green, so named because the color green carries much symbolism in Islam, and most Muslim nations feature green in their flags, emblems, and other identifiers. Its collective goal is to alter and undermine our national character, traditions, and laws so much that it can overthrow our constitutional republic form of government without firing a shot.
Exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right. I couldn't have said it better myself.
You did say that. This is you. Yeah. But I got to tell you that I have people who tune into this issue.
Yeah.
I heard the title of this and I knew what you were talking about before I even saw what the book was.
Sure.
But here's the problem, Pat, and I don't even know if you have a thought about this concept, but people watch things happening in our society, like the border is insecure, and we have people name calling if you want a secure border that you're a hater and you're a xenophobe or something like that.
Right.
We have threats of Islamic terrorism, and the president tries to have an executive order, which he finally got, vetting Islamic people wanting to come to America from Islamic countries where they have a problem with jihad, and he's called an Islamophobe and a hater. So everybody involved on the Marxist left in this country trying to rid us of the Constitution, grow power in Washington, and all those people who are Islamists and they want to push jihad, they didn't have some big meeting in some secret location and every one of them sat down at a big table. You're more talking about their ideologies merging. Is that right?
No, actually. Yes and no. I mean, their ideologies definitely have merged. I mean, there is no sunlight between the radical left and the Islamists. And I distinguish between the Islamists as represented by groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is a Muslim Brotherhood front group. It's actually a front group for the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas, and the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, which is the second largest intergovernmental organization in the world, 56 countries, and the Palestinian territories. All of them have joined forces formally with the radical left. And you see this all the time. The Southern Poverty Law Center, the American Civil Liberties Union, and now even the Anti-Defamation League have jumped on board to promote this idea that anybody that opposes this Islamic agenda is by definition a hater and an Islamophobe. But really, that is just an extension of a long-standing leftist strategy, which is to defame, marginalize, and even financially and sometimes physically destroy anyone who stands in the way of their agenda, and especially people who speak articulately about that agenda. And you know many of those people yourself. Frank Gaffney and the Center for Security Policy, they're roundly criticized by the SPLC, the ACLU, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, as Islamophobes, because they articulate exactly what and who these people are. And so they've joined forces, and it is not, it is informal in the sense that they may not always call each other and sit down and collaborate over how they're going to approach an issue. But when something comes up that raises a red flag to SPLC or CARE or anybody else care also now works with the Black Lives Matter movement, which is
I was trying to get to
communist
that.
organization,
Yes.
which is another communist organization that I've written extensively about. They don't have to. They're all on the same page. They know exactly what to do.
That's what I'm getting at. I mean, that was a much more articulate explanation than what I said, but I was trying to get this idea. You know, people who, for example, American citizens who feel sympathetic about the border, who feel sympathetic about, my gosh, these people are just starving and they're coming up here. We're so wealthy, can't we just let them all in?
Right.
They don't think that they're allying with Islamic terrorists. I mean, there's just, at the ideological level, these entities you mentioned, Southern Poverty Law Center, CARE, ADL now, which is amazing that they're in the middle of that, but on other groups, they all have the same agenda and they all defend each other. But I just feel like there are many Americans who get led along that path. They're sympathetic on one issue, and they think, gee, I just feel really, really bad about but they're not recognizing they're joining in this really
very malevolent,
dangerous mission toward America, aimed at America.
Exactly right. And people need to understand, the technique that they use. And it doesn't matter. You see it with every single issue that the left promotes, whether it's transgenderism, illegal immigration, environment, global warming. It's all about, if you don't agree with them 100%, you're not compassionate. And of course, you can always find examples of situations that you should be compassionate about. I mean, there are terrible stories from some of the people that come across the border. Of course, that's true. But the overall the agenda will not serve those people any more than it will serve us. And that's what people need to understand. They use the language of compassion because it puts them strategically on higher ground.
Moral high ground.
Ground. They wrap themselves in the mantle of compassion, and anybody that opposes can automatically, therefore, be defamed as insensitive, a hater, or racist, or bigoted, or xenophobic, or now the latest turn of phrase is Islamophobe. But all these are just created terms that emotionally capture and either inspire us or intimidate us. Those are the goals. And it has nothing to do with the reality. In reality, they're taking over in the background, and what the ideas that they have for us they're so beyond description bad that it would be, you might have a hard time believing it if I articulated it fully for you.
I'm going to divide up, leave Islam off to the side for a moment and just talk about the leftist movement in this country. I used to say in the show all the time, the leftist agenda, not the average, Joe in Indiana who votes Democrat because his grandmother did or something, but the leaders of the American left, they do actually intend to ultimately dissolve the concept of the constitutional government. They have, for example, the Green New Deal. When you think, oh, well, sure, I'm an environmentalist. Who doesn't love clean air and clean water? When you dig into it, you realize it is a complete, and I will use the word communist, takeover of this country. If the Green New Deal, as articulated by the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes of the world, and every single Democrat presidential candidate has signed on, if you articulate that and understand what it is a complete destruction of the free market system, complete destruction of our comfort, our way of life. You're going to go to, allegedly, they won't live on drip, but everybody else will. The discomfort of not having reliable energy, not having your home warm in the winter and cool in the summer. It is, and I think the Green New Deal, and I think the southern border being so just barraged and overwhelmed, I think those two things helped Americans wake up to say, wow, the left really is no longer on the American playing field. They're no longer part of America. Do you agree those two are particularly strong?
Yes, and I don't believe they've ever been on the side of America. I don't believe they ever have. But what has happened is that with the election of President Trump and America speaking out with that election, just as in 2010, they're thrown into panic because in 2010, the Tea Parties restored more Republicans to state houses and state legislatures that had been in office since 1928. And that terrified them. So immediately what happened to the Tea Party? It became this party of racists, bigots, throwbacks
Haters.
who missed white America. And so this is just a replay of 2010 because President Trump struck a chord with us and Americans spoke, and they're terrified that America is on the rebound and may destroy their entire agenda that they have spent decades slowly building. And the thing about illegal immigration, well, actually the overall immigration agenda, it is that it's targeted to facilitate their agenda, period. Firstly, and you and I know this, and a lot of people are coming to realize it, but it has to be said repeatedly that their first goal is to get as many non-Americans into this country that don't believe in, understand, or have any attachment to, or want to assimilate with our society, understand our constitutional Republican form of government, who will vote reliably Democrat and deliver to them the permanent, they call it permanent progressive majority they have been seeking for decades. And if they're successful, and they talk about demographics being destiny, this is something they've discussed among themselves, and for them, it's basically a waiting game. If we don't do anything about immigration, they will win by default, simply because of the way those demographics vote and how those demographics are trending, both in terms of legal, illegal immigration, and birth rates. And so that's number one. Number two, by bringing in people from hundreds of different countries that don't share our culture or history, it's basically diluting American culture to the point where it becomes unrecognizable, and then it essentially disappears. And at the same time, they're indoctrinating our children against that American culture, calling it racist, white supremacy, white privilege. All these things are communist terms. These are all invented by the Communist Party, and I can go through the people who invented them. And so it's all part and parcel of the same thing. It's a very widespread, sophisticated divide and conquer strategy, which also is targeting the Muslim population in the United States. Because I believe firmly that most Muslims in the United States would rather just live here and enjoy the prosperity, the freedom, and everything else that we have. But the radical groups, the Muslim Brotherhood groups, especially CARE, want to provoke hatred. And they always talk about anti-Muslim. It's not about anti-Muslim. It's about them. And I can even quote Muslims who have talked about CARE because, when the Al-Shabaab Somali terrorist group and ISIS were recruiting people in the United States, they focused a lot on Minneapolis, Minnesota. Parents of Somali children who were recruited by Al-Shabaab said that CARE was facilitating that recruitment, and CARE told them to shut up. CARE told them, do not talk to the FBI, and anybody that did was labeled, guess what? An Islamophobe.
They were Muslim, but they're Islamophobe.
But they were Islamophobes.
Well, I love what you just broke down, and one reason I do this show, I do a lot of public speaking, and I'm often talking to people that already agree with us, and so I'm always thinking about, what is it that will be, what little seeds of thought can you plant that help people see, wow, I didn't recognize what was happening. I think the border insecurity, as I said a moment ago, it helped people realize what you just said. The left doesn't want a secure border. They want to flood America with illegal aliens who will then disappear into the heartland, and someday when the Democrats have the House and the Senate and the White House, they will magically all get amnesty, and they think they'll have a permanent Democrat voting base. Years ago when I said that, people thought, man, you're so cynical. That's so extreme.
Yeah.
I think most Americans see that now because the border problem right now, the pure numbers, the Democrats' opposition to border security of any kind is helping them see that. Now moving over to Islam, I think many people in America wanted to believe, after 9/11, wanted to believe what President Bush was telling them. Islam is a religion of peace. They don't mean any harm. The jihadists are not really following what Islam teaches. The jihadists are doing exactly what Islam teaches.
Yeah.
You can say that and know that truth, and at the same time understand what our guest Jim Simpson said, that there are Muslims in America and around the world who do not actually want to be involved in jihad.
Yeah.
They came here to get the heck away from some of it. But we have in our country a mix of people who came here to escape jihad and violence and people who came here to spread the jihadist mission to America. This is why it's so complex here, getting ourselves straight what our policy is, and then moving on to what your book is talking about, the number of refugees, there's kind of a mixture of the two issues, the number of refugees and the number of immigrants coming into America when we were not actually sure of their jihadist intentions created a danger, and it's a great example of your red-green axis.
Right.
You're mixing the two things. So
Absolutely.
this is a very broad question, but you talk a lot in your book. You have data. First of all, the book we're talking about is this, filled with data. You must simply have it. But you talk about the number of people coming to America, and there was a decision by President Trump in 2019, I think, we're reducing our refugees to 20,000. Many people said that sounded unkind. What's your thought about that and the way, backing up from that, how the refugee policy has been used against America?
Certainly. Well, first of all, he began reducing the one authority he has over the refugee resettlement program is he decides the refugee caps. That is how many people you can bring in every year. So in 2017, his first year in office, he reduced it to 50,000, whereas in that year before he left, Obama had put it at 110,000. So he reduced it to 50,000 in 2017.
Can I just jump in 1 second?
Yep.
The quickest thing. We're not talking about immigration. Immigration is 1 million a year or so legally coming here. We're talking about refugees.
But I'd like to say something about that too.
Oh, go ahead.
But anyway, let me finish this. So, and then in 2018, he reduced it to 45,000. In 2019, he reduced it to 30,000. This is the refugee caps. And for 2020, he's reduced it to 18,000.
Okay.
Now, there are private, tax-exempt contractors who are all run by leftists, even though 6 of the 9 are nominally religious. They are all run by radical leftists, and they all make money by the head to resettle refugees. So the refugee program actually encourages these government contractors to jump on board with the agenda of getting as many refugees. So they're out there protesting and talking about how inhumane it is that we're reducing the refugee cap. So he's reduced it to 18,000, which is the lowest in its history, and the last 3 years have seen fewer refugees than at any time in the program's history. As far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing. But there are many groups that come under the authority of the refugee program that are not actually refugees. They have something called special immigrant visas. They have the Cuban Haitian entrant program. They have asylum seekers. They have victims of trafficking. And they also have the unaccompanied alien children program, which is what we're having on the border now. Yeah. And so when you add them all up, it's still over 100,000 people coming in here a year. But that's not it. And those people, all of those people, take welfare at astronomical rates. Astronomical rates. And I talk about that extensively in the book. But the 1 million legal permanent residents we allow in every year, the business community wants all that because they say, oh, we need those people to fill jobs Americans won't take. In 2018, or maybe it was 2017, I forget which is the last data year they had available, 12% of that 1 million legal permanent residents came here on employment visas. The rest are family reunification and other similar programs which is a polite way of saying chain migration.
Yep.
And these are all just low-income families of low-income people that have come here before, so they are not adding anything. In fact, they are hugely adding to the burden. They are adding to the bottom line for Democratic voters. And I would also say, on the illegal alien front, it doesn't matter whether they're legal or illegal, because as we've seen, the corrupt courts have prevented the Trump administration from limiting census to citizens. Yep. So non-citizens are being counted, and that's going to add Democrat districts to the Congress for this upcoming election. Furthermore, those people, because most of them speak Spanish, go into Hispanic areas and help register Hispanic voters who are legal to vote, but generally vote at very low rates, which once again facilitates the Democratic left's efforts to essentially steal this country. And that's what they're doing with their immigration agenda.
Very well said. It's exactly what they're doing. I appreciate that so much. Your book is full of data. I do want to mention one other thing. I saw you at an event where you spoke last night, and my question I was getting at was, I mean, this information, you got to have it, and so you can respond to your friends who doubt that we have a problem. But the kind of things people can do, and we talked last night, for example, about the 1980 Refugee Resettlement Act. Mm-hmm. There is no law that requires us, there's no unchangeable law that requires us to continue to even participate in the refugee program. Much of the refugee decisions facing America are brought to us by the United Nations. They have a role in designating who comes here. So I'm getting at, we could as Americans say, we're going to remove ourselves from this refugee resettlement process, the UN does, still open our borders to those we choose to accept, have a direct process, get out of and then also to get out of the business of assuming that every year we must take a certain number of refugees in. And I think the willingness of Congress to say that, to say we have a problem of bringing people who don't assimilate, we're losing our culture, the fabric of our country. I actually think that could fly, given where we are right now. But what do you tell people who say, what can I do?
Well, that is definitely one thing. I mean, the president has done everything he can within his limited authority to reduce refugee resettlement. A big part of that was his extreme vetting idea, which has substantially reduced helped to substantially reduce and keep below the caps the number of refugees coming in, which was a sound idea because prior to that, there was no vetting. Practically every Muslim Somali living in the United States today, we have no idea if they came here legally or not, because many of them committed fraud on their applications. Yep. And especially the family reunification program had to be shut down under President Obama because they found by doing DNA testing that 80% were not actually family members who said they were family members. And none of them have been sent back, by the way. They've all committed a crime, but they're all still sitting there in Minneapolis or wherever, and nobody has said, you got to go home. And the crazy thing is, a lot of these Somalis now go back to Mogadishu, now go back to Somalia, where supposedly the Refugee Act requires that they be unwilling or afraid to go back to their country of origin due to fear of oppression. But now they're going back there for vacation to visit their relatives. What's more, the Minneapolis City Council had decided that those who live in public housing will only have to pay a very minimal rent in the months that they go back there because they came back to the United States and complained that their rent was months in arrears and they couldn't afford it.
Yeah, they are
it's
enablers.
Insane.
Actually, that's red-green axis right there, these left-wing Minneapolis City Council members. Well,
But I didn't really answer your question.
Okay.
What can people do?
Oh, yeah.
Well, first of all, need to elect more people who are willing to wrestle with this subject because, frankly, a lot of people in Congress from both sides of the aisle are not. That's one thing. Another thing is, of course, spreading the information. But, when you talk to people, we have people that listen to us say, yeah, we get it, we understand, we need to do things. There's no magic bullet. You get involved in all kinds of different ways. You get involved in groups here. There's so many different things we can do. You can run for office yourself. Hey, big idea. Finally, You want to talk to people who are on the fence or who don't agree. Don't preach to them. Don't try to tell them, you need to understand this, you need to get this. Most people look at it and say, oh, that's just conspiracy theory, something like that. Don't tell them anything. Ask them. Ask them. Sounds to me, Debbie, like you just are a compassionate person, and you'd like to see all these people come in because you're compassionate. Is that true? Yeah, sure, that's true. But what would you say if you understood that half of these children are being trafficked? Do you still feel the same way? You know, once you establish a rapport with somebody by asking them to express their feelings about it, you can talk. Sometimes you're able to open the door to talk further about it. It's a good way to handle people who are on the fence or who disagree with you. Don't get angry or argue with them. Just ask them to explain themselves, and ask them in a way that you're sympathetic and willing to listen to. And the falsehoods, the intellectual non sequiturs that come out, they become obvious to them if you ask enough questions.
Yeah. Jim Simpson, what you could do, in addition to what you just said, is share facts from this book. I'm telling you that I think most people think they are informed and they are compassionate, and so they don't want to really stand up, or they want to face the challenges America has. But as I say, encourage people all the time in speaking up for America, you have to have some facts ready. Just kind of plant the seed. Did you know this? Does this concern you? Are you aware of this? And if you want to have about 1 million facts, you could plant right here in this book.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Jim Simpson, thank you so very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
you coming in.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much
for being here.
me.
And I'm telling you, folks, this is a great, it's a mini encyclopedia about the issue we face.